The morning after the storm looked like God raked a fist across my place. Fence rails split, shingles drowned in mud. The creek chewed a bite from my corral and then slunk back ashamed. Cattle bunched in a corner, ribs showing. Each rib an accusation. I counted damage I couldn't afford be why the lightning split cottonwood I saw boots. Too big, too still. Then two bodies took shape in the churned muck where the yard gives up to open ground. Apache women, by beadwork gone dull with rain and braids heavy as wet rope. Big women. The nearer one, older by her face, might stand near 7 feet if upright. The other had a fighter's shoulders and a jaw set like a vice even asleep. Out. Here, every mercy gets weighed against who might ride up and call it treason. Help Apaches, and a neighbor might fetch a rope. Walk away, and something quieter in you stays dead. My heart did that mule still thing that means snakes are close. I scanned the ridges. Nothing moved but steam off cattle and willow leaves shivering. In puddles I knelt by the nearer woman. A welt the color of eggplant ran from collar to elbow. Fresh work. I found a pulse, faint but stubborn. Her eyes opened and locked on mine. I've seen fear. This was different. Raw terror angled past me toward the ridge. Like her fear knew a name, and it was riding down. She coughed creek water and forced one word I didn't need translated. Sister. The giant lay tangled in stormfall, lips blue, lashes. Gritty. A broken arrowhead stuck in the meat of her thigh. Blood and rain made clay that glued my fingers when I pressed to slow it. Under the cold, heat. A drum refusing to stop. Every rule said turn away. But the winter I buried my wife. A boy from a band I barely knew sat my fevered body up, brewed bitter bark, and charged no price. I have owed that silence ever since. I've got you, I told the smaller sister. My voice sounded like it slept. In my boots. She flicked her gaze to the ridge. Danger on a timetable. I slid my shoulder under the giant's arm and heaved. She weighed like a promise. Heavy because it matters. I dragged her by inches, boots cutting ruts. The other woman lurched. I caught her under the ribs, and we moved like a 3-legged animal. Toward the porch. Inside, the cabin shrank. I laid the giant on my bed and the other on quilts by the fire. Her hand clamped my sleeve with surprising strength. Name? She asked, English broken but sharp. Ezekiel Marsh, I said, sounding both confession and dare. Outside, shy sun turned the mud to old penny shine. Riders would come, Apache, neighbors, or both. But my choice had already been made the second. I saw those boots lying still. Rest, I told them, and took up my knife for the arrow shard. My hands shook once, then steadied like a man reading scripture. Whatever crested that ridge would find me busy, not hiding, and 2 women breathing. Who hadn't been when the rain quit? The cabin breathed heat and wood smoke. I boiled my knife and a shirt needle, poured whiskey into 2 tin cups, then into a third for courage I pretended was medicine. The big sister groaned when I touched the arrow shard. The smaller one tapped. Her own chest. Ayana. Then the giant. It'll. Ayana, I said. Her eyes weighed me. Measured, not begging. She nodded at the wound. Calm as a midwife I cut around the splinter and fished the iron out slick with stubborn heat. It'l's breath hitched, then steadied. I packed the cut with clean moss, wrapped it tight, and kept talking even though she didn't have my words. You're all right. Stay. I just pitched the bloody rag into the stove when Ayana stiffened. I heard it too. A horseshoe kiss rock, far off, then another. On the ridge, beads moved against the sky. Riders, a dozen at least, sun on a lance. Ayana pointed to the drag marks and droplets I'd left from yard to porch. They follow blood. She swallowed and spoke fast. Chief's son came to claim It'll. She refused. His men struck. We fought. Blood on both sides. They hunt us to make lesson. Any white man who helps dies. My mouth went dry as flour. Neighbors called me soft. This would make me stupid besides. What would your chief say? I asked. Chief Nalish weighs law, she said. But men who ride for a humiliated son ride quicker than law. There is a test. Courage calls courage. If you stand with open hands and speak name and purpose, they must hear before they cut. If they are men with ears. I checked rifle and shotgun, counted cartridges, then shoved grain sacks into a waist-high wall by the door. The cabin shrank to my breath. Ayana shook her head. Not gun first. Put water on the porch. Hat off. Your name from the belly, not the throat. A man who is not afraid to die is a man they must measure. Do I look unafraid? I asked. You look decided, she said. And that would have to do that I propped Idle with rolled blankets, tucked my grandmother's quilt to her shoulders, and set my wife's silver ring, kept in a tin for years, by the bedpost. If a bullet took me, I wanted the room to tell the truth about what I loved. Hoofbeats gathered like rain not yet falling. Men with hair bound back and paint still bright where the storm hadn't licked it away fanned at my fence line. One called, out in words like stones. Ayana answered through the door, quick as flint. The walls carried her voice like a drumhead. What did you tell them? I asked. That law lives here today, she said, eyes never leaving the crack of light. That you will speak, that you have saved life before. I stepped onto the porch with my hat off and palms open. I set a bucket and tin cup in plain sight, raised my hands until my shoulders burned. The riders watched. A hawk circled, measuring the space between courage and foolishness. Water, I called. Talk. A rider with a blue handprint across his chest nudged forward, drank from my cup, and set it down. His gaze cut through me and into the cabin. Behind. He spoke again. I understood this. I had bought a minute. Maybe two. Inside, Ayana whispered, hold. Name and deed next. Make them see you. The door jumped under a fist like a mallet. The bar I'd set shivered, sifting sawdust. Commands punched through the chinks. 2 men at once, then one voice that cut clean. Ayana answered firm, turning the room into a courtroom. Idle's breath sawed behind me. Wet leather and horse smell seeped in. They demand the wounded woman, Ayana said, and the man who hides her. They say the chief's son was shamed. They make balance with blood. Balance, I muttered. They know that word. Her. Eyes caught mine. Do you know the name River Girl? The word hit a board I keep nailed shut. Why? Say it to them, she said, urgency cracking her calm. Say it with your name. Say the river and the cold month. Say who you put into her mother's arms. 3 winters back, the San Pedro ran black with melt. I'd gone with a rope to haul a steer that had waited where the current speaks last. A cry cut under the roar. Then an arm, small as a willow switch, and a braid slapping water. I tied off, stepped in. On the 3rd dive I caught her and crawled us both out. Her mother keened, then pressed a sunburst medallion into my hand until an elder took it, saying debts must be kept clean. I kept my mouth shut. No reward, no story. Just a child coughing river, and Ayana read my face and nodded. Among us, you took on her breath until she could carry it. That breath is owed back. Speak, or they will treat you like any settler. With a shut door. The bar jumped again. Men outside were building courage by hitting wood. Courage answers courage, she'd said. My mouth felt the length of a dry creek. I lifted the bar. Idle rasped. What are you doing? Letting them see I'm not hiding. I opened enough to show my face and hands. The blue handprint rider sat stone still, eyes narrow like a man sighting over distance. My name is Ezekiel Marsh, I said, from the belly. 3 winters ago, on the San Pedro where the cottonwoods fork, I pulled a small girl from the flood. Her braid held a red thread. Her mother called her River Girl. An elder took a sunburst medallion back from my hand. Wind combed the grass. The rider's chin lifted a hair. He spoke one word I knew by shape, River Girl's given name. The younger men argued, quick and hot. The blue handprint cut them quiet with a look. You say name, he answered in careful English. You say river. Cold month true. We carry to Nalish. He will cut the path. Cut the path, I said, Hands still up, and no more blows hit the door. Above us the hawk climbed, as if meat had been unpromised. My knees wanted to fold. I kept them, locked and shut the door. Ayana's fingers trembled at last around the cup. You threw them a rope made of law, she said. It holds if the chief takes it. And if he doesn't, then it burns our hands. Hooves turned from my yard and slid down the slope. Not rushing, not lingering. A decision postponed is a kind of mercy. I dropped the bar and let the quiet settle, less like a verdict now, more like a chance. Say it again, Ayana murmured, as if setting a seal on it. I am Ezekiel Marsh, I said to the wood and smoke and sleeping giant, and I claimed the dead of a child pulled from a river. Night filled the yard until the mud looked like ink. The riders on the ridge held their posts. Inside, the stove ticked. It'll slept in jolts. Ayana washed with steady hands. White riders came at full dark. Lanterns floated first, then faces, neighbors. Around a deputy U.S. Marshal. His tin star flashed. His voice was all docket. Householder, he called. Opened by federal authority. Ayana's glance said it plain. If he drags us out, the blood debt shatters. I lifted the bar and stepped onto the porch. Name? I asked. Caney said. Reports of hostiles. 2 large Apache women tied to killings north. I will search and seize anyone giving aid. My lodge holds parley until sunrise, I said. Both women are here under a debt owed me by Chief Nalish's people. That custom is invoked. Custom isn't law. Ayana stood beside me. Among us, it is. A man who saved a child breath. For breath is owed hearing by her father. Break that, and you trade a name for a feud. Murmurs stirred. Rope talk, the old itch to end a night with a hanging. A torch flared. Kane unfolded a paper. Warrants. The right to enter. The right to detain. You, Marsh, stand liable for harboring fugitives and obstruction. Don't make me prove a point. Then prove patience. I said before fear could edit me. Nalish rides at first light. He knows my name and the river where I caught his child. Let him cut the path. If I lie, take the door with your star. His gaze slid past me. Idle had pushed herself upright, a wall of woman. Hair loose, wound-bound, eyes level. She gave Kane no more attention than a ridge gives weather. He swallowed whatever speech he'd primed. Ring the place, he told his men. No one in or out. If the chief comes, he answers to me. 6 guns fixed along my fence. On the ridge, coal-red pinpricks marked where the Apaches settled to watch us watch them. Inside, fear and law shared a chair. I set my rifle by the jamb and sat with my back to the door. If Nalish comes as law, I meet him the same, I said. Hat off, Ayana murmured. Words clean. No boasting. No begging. Room for anger? Room for truth, she said, finishing the bandage with a hard tuck. Midnight stretched. Coyotes called. Someone outside sang a thin hymn about blood. The tune slid under the door. I saw the river, the small arm, the braid with red thread, the elder reclaiming the sunburst metal. That memory stood beside me like a witness that wouldn't sit. It awoke, watched the hinges like a jury. Ayana twisted a strip of cloth into a cord and unwound it. Before dawn the cold sharpened. Frost webbed the yard. Men at the fence stamped and blew into their hands. On the ridge, silhouettes straightened together as if one string had been pulled. A low horn sounded. 3 notes. Kane rose in his stirrups, already smiling. I took my hat in both hands. We wait for sunrise, I told the women, the ring of men, and the part of me that wanted to run. Then we let law speak and learn if it has ears or only teeth. The east brightened, blade by blade. I stepped onto the porch to meet what the light would name me. Sun cut the frost into diamonds, and with it came riders from the north, straight, unhurried, the way men move when their reasons will do the killing. A man in a buffalo hair mantle led them. I knew him without meeting him, Nalish. Elders flanked him with medicine bundles, not war paint. Cain rose in his stirrups to look taller. You are in federal jurisdiction, he called. I've got warrants for homicide. Nalish studied him, then my porch, then Ayana. His gaze softened at her, hardened at the men at my fence, and settled on me, hat in my hands. He spoke to Ayana first. Her reply was flint on steel. Then in careful English, you speak the river. Month of ice. Braid with red thread. Say it again. I did. At sunburst medallion. An elder touched the bundle at his chest. Nalish set his jaw. My youngest, he said, palm to his heart. You carried her lungs for a little while. Those breaths are counted. Under our law, I owe you ears before I owe anyone blood. Cain edged between us. Under my authority, these women are fugitives tied to 2 dead settlers north of the salt grass. Harboring is a crime. Resist, and I name you an accessory. Nalish did not raise his voice. Under the treaty at Warm Springs, your agents promised not to break parley called in good faith. We keep our law when we carry our wounded. That treaty doesn't supersede murder, Cain snapped. It binds how we speak before we decide what is true, Nalish answered. He looked at me. Do you shelter them from lust or fear? From debt, I said, and because they were dying in my yard. Ayana stepped forward. The chief's son struck Idle when she refused him. 2 men with him died because they came into our fire with fists on steel. Self-defense is not murder under either law. Cain's jaw pulled sideways. My witnesses, your witnesses are not here, Nalish said. Mine are. He gestured, and the blue handprint rider and 2 elders came down. They laid their palms to the ground at my threshold and spoke in Apache, long, exact, like counting coup with verbs. I stood in a doorway that had never mattered to anyone but me and felt it turn into a bench of law. The men at my fence went quiet. The hawk from yesterday drew a slow circle. Nalish lifted his hand. I recognized the blood debt, he said to yard, neighbors, and star alike. This man's house is a circle drawn by my word until I decide. Any man who crosses it with anger crosses me. The 2 deaths north were defense of my daughter's bodies. We will make restitution per treaty. Goods, horses, labor, not with their lives and not by your rope. Cain opened and shut his mouth. You think your word shields them from federal power. I think keeping your own promises shields you from war, Nalish said. You are at my parley. Listen, then carry what you heard to your judge. He turned to me. Ezekiel Marsh, I remember the river. I remember the thread. The debt stands while I stand. My legs trembled with something that wasn't fear. Relief, maybe the first hint of belonging. I nodded because my voice might break and turn a public moment private. Nalish swung down from his horse. Sit, he said. We have a law to braid. Nalish didn't sit. He stood like the yard was a courtroom. A breath carried must be paid with more than thanks, he said. Do you seek payment, Ezekiel Marsh? I looked at my torn fences, at Idle on my bed, at Ayana steady by the door. I want what's right to outlast this morning. He nodded. Elders unwrapped a small bundle, a softened strip of hide, a carved sun rubbed thin. When a man takes danger into his house for one of ours and asks no price, Nalish said, we may make him kin, son by my word. Then his roof is my roof, his quarrels mine, his safety my duty. It is a shield and a yoke. I won't set it on your neck unless you bow for it. King gave a dry laugh. Renaming a settler doesn't void a warrant. 2 dead men north, remember? And a promise at parley, remember? Nalish answered. If you must hang someone, hang your oath. He turned to me. Adoption is a burden. You answer with words before bullets. You come when called. You keep our peace as you keep your stock. Speak if you accept. Son, no one had put that word near me since my father used it with disappointment. My life felt like a shed I might widen, tools and silence pushed back so others could stand inside. I tried the yoke in my mind and found it fit like responsibility, not chains. Ayana's eyes met mine and slid away. In that glance lived relief and something I refused to name. What of the sisters if I bow? They stand under the same law. Nalish said, a hand laid on them without their say is a hand laid on my blood. Burn your roof, and you burn my lodge. The men who chase them will answer to me, not to their vanity. Cain edged closer. I'll take this to a judge, he warned. A ceremony in dirt doesn't outrank federal paper. Then carry it, Nalish said. Say you honored parley and left this house standing. See who thanks you for not starting a war you won't finish. The yard held still. I thought of the little girl coughing river on my coat, of my wife's ring by Idle's bedpost, of empty places at my table. I went to one knee because certainty should be lower than pride. Put the yoke on me, I said. I'll carry it. I'll answer when called, and hold to peace as long as peace offers a hand. Nalish stepped close. He set the hide at my throat. The carved sun warmed my collarbone. His thumb pressed once to the notch there, a mark without bruise. He spoke in Apache, slow, exact, and then in English. Stand up, my son. I stood. The word found bone. Men at my fence shifted. Cain's mouth flattened around a curse he couldn't spend. The blue handprint rider smiled. Ayana exhaled at last. Idle's mouth curved despite the pain. Cain threw his last rock. If those deaths north came by your daughter's hands, he told Nalish, you'll answer when the court calls. I will stand where I must, the chief said. And today I stand here. He raised his palm to ridge and fence. Hear me, Ezekiel Marsh has a father. Men who'd come for rope stared at their reins. Torches guttered. Inside my chest, something I'd kept shut sat up. Shield and yoke, I could feel both. I touched the small sun, warm from another man's hand, and knew it would stay warm for a long road. Spring wrote green into every wound. Fences stood, the creek sang. By July the yard spoke peace. Horses blowing after long miles, children laughing, soft slaps of traded goods. Nalish riders made my place a hinge between camps and town. Neighbors who once spat at paint came for salt, flour, axle grease, a fair scale. Cain came with 2 fort men, eyes on my fence like a judge sizing a lie. The suits wrote, reliable contact, and left. This adoption trick won't hold forever. He said, maybe not, I told him. It holds today. It'll healed strong and merry, ending fights by setting a palm on a shoulder. Ayana kept the numbers and the talk and the small mercies. She taught me her words. I taught her receipts. When she painted my name in Apache on a plank, my ribs seemed to widen. It might have been simple, except the shield was also a fence. Adoption made us siblings by law. The feeling that grew between customers had no law. It rooted in ordinary things. A strand of hair tucked behind her ear, the warmth of her shoulder when we counted coins, the way she listened until worry let go. I woke from honest sleep guilty, because a brother shouldn't want what a man wants. She knew. People who carry each other through danger learn each other's silences. So we did good work and said safe words while the one thing we wanted climbed. The wall like a vine we wouldn't name. No one mentioned it, which is a way of mentioning it every hour. When the first cold breeze found the cottonwoods, Nalish rode in with 2 elders and the woman who braided Ayana's hair as a child. He studied the yard, smiled at Idle hefting a flour sack, then let his face go still. My son, he said to me. To Ayana, he spoke her name like a prayer and a warning. I ended one danger and began another. We do not marry sister to brother. The shield I gave has become a fence. Law has hands. It can hold or let go. I can release this son from adoption before those who tied it. If the women of our family consent, and if Ayana chooses from her belly and not from pity, I can offer sonship a second way, through marriage that answers to our law and to theirs. But I will not trade a shield for a broken custom. The family must say yes with open eyes. The man stands bareheaded. The woman speaks without pressure. Do you want this? I asked Ayana. Her smile tried and failed. What I want has been living here like a guest we keep feeding without speaking to. She said, I will speak to it. To the chief. I will answer in the circle. I want Idle beside me. Nalish looked at me. And you? I'll stand where you tell me. I said, bareheaded, no boasting, no begging. If I must hear no, I'll keep the peace you put on me and call it a good burden. He nodded. At the next full moon, at dawn, we'll draw a circle in your yard. We will unbind what I bound, if that is the will, and bind what you ask, if the women bring their yes. Let the valley witness we prefer law to hunger. He left us to ledgers and sacks, and the long afternoon. Work went on. The wanting, once named, did not get smaller. It sat on the porch like a fourth chair, waiting for morning to take its place. At dawn of the full moon, we drew a flower circle where the grass still held cold beads. The yard looked almost like a wedding morning. My hat hung from a nail. I stood bareheaded with the carved sun warm at my throat, Ayana at my left, Idle behind. Her, Nalish stepped into the circle. Law that holds may also let go, he said in Apache, then in English. I bound this man as my son to shield life. Shield became fence. Do we cut? The elders thumped their staffs. He unknotted the softened hide and held it high. Ezekiel Marsh, I release you clean. You have been a good son. If this circle asks again, I will answer. The absence felt like taking off a heavy coat in spring. Lighter, colder, honest. I held my hand still and looked at Ayana long enough to see her chin steady. Nalish turned to the women. Now the family speaks. The braider stepped forward. He did not eat our bread as a thief, she said. He stood bareheaded when wolves sniffed the door. He learned our words. I give my yes. Idle raised her palm. My yes. Then the woman, Nalish said. Ayana drew 2 breaths and let them go. She faced me. I am not a pity, she said. I am not a payment. I am a choice. I choose you. Her hand didn't tremble when she took my wife's ring from the tin and slid it onto her finger. Let this be ours. Cain and 2 fort men watched from their horses, pens scratching. This isn't recognized, he said. Nalish lifted his chin. Then we braid the laws. 2 papers came out. One smoked at the edges, one crisp from the county seat. Nalish spoke obligations first, then gifts. A traveling preacher read the territorial form. I signed with a hand that remembered fence posts. Ayana signed with the name she painted on my plank. Cain pocketed his pen. I'll file, he muttered. I don't start fights I can't finish. We ate stew. Children ran where fear once pooled. When the sun stood on the ridge like bright metal, Nalish set the hide in my hands. Keep it, he said. Not as a yoke now, but a reminder, shield can be made again. Toward evening a wind came up the creek, and with it a sound I hadn't heard here in years, song that wasn't a warning. I walked the fence with Ayana, her hand warm in mine. The valley keeps a ledger no clerk can balance, a saved breath, a clean name in a doorway, a circle at dawn when men who could have chosen blood chose law. Weeks later a letter with a seal arrived. Inquiry closed pending further evidence. It said, our wedding stood on paper and in hearts. Trade fattened. Fences held. The creek stopped chewing and started singing. We added a shade awning, then a second scale, then a bench where old men argued in the cool. When trouble came, as trouble always does, we met it bareheaded and told our names from the bellied. I keep the carved sun by the door. I touch it when riders are only dust and when stamped paper shows up. It reminds me the right law isn't a rope or a loophole, but a promise you keep. Ayana squeezes my hand, and the river in me, quiet since the day I pulled River Girl from the water, runs sure again. This is the final part.